Hi Logic students, this is the second video in the series on section 1.4. We ended the first video talking about the fact that an argument is valid just in case if the premises are or were true, the conclusion would have to be true as well. So I want to emphasize that you shouldn't misread or misunderstand this statement of the validity of an argument. To say that an argument is valid is not to say that the premises are true and the conclusion is true as well. When you're trying to determine whether an argument is valid or invalid, you do this simply by evaluating whether information entails, the information you have entails or does not entail the information contained in the conclusion. So you're trying to evaluate whether the information given in the premises entails the information contained in the conclusion. And this is because, in general, information entails or can entail further information, and information entails or does not entail further information, independently of whether the information that you start out with is true or false. This may seem complicated, but it's actually something we're all familiar with. You can reason about things that don't exist, and you can reason well or poorly about things that don't exist. And similarly, you can reason well or poorly about things that do exist. It's not the truth of statements per se that entails that the reasoning is correct or incorrect. It's whether the information that you have in the premises does or doesn't entail the information in the conclusion. Again, this may sound complicated, but let me give you a couple of examples, and it's actually pretty easy to understand. Look at this one, number one. Luke Skywalker is Princess Leia's brother. Therefore, Princess Leia is Luke Skywalker's sister. This argument is valid. Even if, matter of fact, there's no Luke Skywalker, there's no Princess Leia, so these are fictional characters. So this statement is false because there's no state of affairs in the world that corresponds to this particular relation because the characters don't exist. And similarly, this is a false statement. However, this information, and it doesn't matter that it's false, it's still information. This information entails this information, meaning that if it were true that there's a person by the name of Luke Skywalker, was the brother of Princess Leia, it would have to be true that Princess Leia is Luke Skywalker's sister. This information entails this information. So you can reason well, as in this case, it's a valid argument. You can reason validly about things that are false, that don't really exist. Similarly, you can reason, or conversely, you can reason poorly about things that are true. If you were to argue in this way, 2 plus 2 is 4, therefore Paris is the capital of France. This statement is true. 2 plus 2 is 4, of course, and this statement is true as well. So everything is true here, but the reasoning is bad. This information, 2 plus 2 is 4, does not entail that Paris is the capital of France. Of course it is, and you know that it is. But if this is all the information that you had, you wouldn't be able to extract from this information that Paris is the capital of France. Whereas up here, from this information, you can extract with absolute certainty that this information follows. Okay, so what makes an argument valid or invalid is not the fact that it has true premises or false premises and whatnot. Rather, it's valid when the information in the premise or premises entails the information in the conclusion, regardless of whether true or false. And it's invalid when the information contained in the premise or premises does not entail the information contained in the conclusion. Okay, so the question you have to ask yourself when you evaluate an argument to determine a deductive argument to determine if it's valid or invalid is this one. If the premises were true, would the conclusion have to be true as well? Not asking yourself, are the premises true? No. You ask yourself, if they were true, would the conclusion follow with certainty? The answer is yes, the argument is valid. The answer is no, the argument is invalid. I have two examples here. So let me make this slightly bigger. And we can immediately see how this works. Here's the argument. All dogs are mammals. All mammals have lungs. Therefore, all dogs have lungs. This is a valid argument, but it's not valid because this is true, and this is true, and this is true. That's not the reason why it's valid. It's valid because this information entails this information. You can see it by drawing maybe a little diagram. You can draw the premises, and you'll see that if you do that, you will also draw the conclusion kind of automatically. All dogs are mammals. How do you represent that? You can say that this is the set of dogs. And if you say all dogs are mammals, that means that all dogs are contained in the set of mammals. And then the second premise says all mammals have lungs. So that means that the set of mammals is contained within the set of animals that have lungs. Okay, this is what the premises say. But look, the conclusion follows from those premises. If all dogs are inside the circle of mammals, and all mammals are inside the circle of animals with lungs, obviously all dogs have to be inside the circle of animals with lungs. So this argument is valid because the information contained in the premises entails the information contained in the conclusion. And notice a very interesting fact. I only drew the premises, but by drawing the two premises, I've also drawn the conclusion. All dogs have lungs has been drawn, even if I didn't take a third step to draw the conclusion. So that means that the conclusion was actually built into the premises, and that's what happens in a valid argument. Now look at the second example. All cats are writers. All writers have horns, therefore all cats have horns. If you have followed what I've said so far, then you know that you shouldn't simply ask yourself whether the premises are true and the conclusion is true and whatnot. You have to pay attention to the reasoning. Does this information entail this information or not? So don't let the craziness of this distract you. Let's draw the information in the premises. All cats are writers, so these are cats, set of cats. The first premise says all cats are writers. All cats are members of the set of writers. The second premise says all writers have horns, so all members of the set of writers are members of the set of creatures with horns. Therefore, says the conclusion, all cats have horns. You see that the information contained in the premises again entails the information contained in the conclusion. If it were true that all cats are writers and that all writers have horns, it would have to be true that all cats have horns. Now, of course, this argument is crazy because it has false premises. So it's not going to be a sound argument. That is a valid argument that has all true premises. You don't have to accept the conclusion. because the starting points are false premises, but the reasoning is correct because it's the same reasoning as in the previous example, so much so that you can see the diagrams are the same. So validity is one thing, soundness is another. A valid argument is an argument where the conclusion follows necessarily from the premises. So this argument is valid, just as valid as the other one. But it's not sound because the premises are not true. A sound argument is a valid argument with all true premises. So because these premises are false, the second argument is unsound, whereas the first one is sound. The reasoning is valid, and also the premises are true. I hope this helps clarify things. So you can have an argument that sounds really crazy, but it's still valid. Valid doesn't mean you have to accept it and whatnot. Valid simply means that the reasoning underneath the argument is correct. I'll say something more about this in the third video.